Hi everyone, it's Libby from the library. I'm filming from my kitchen / dining room area, as you can tell. It's a little bit different, not so much the library, so welcome to my home. Today I'm going to do a crafting session with you, a special crafting session to commemorate ANZAC Day. But before we commence, I'd like to do our acknowledgement of country. We are on the land of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, and we acknowledge the ancestors who have taken care of this land, waterways and sky. And we are one with this land. That's nice. So today I'll be showing you how to make a wreath out of household items. Now it takes a little while to make and it doesn't need to be perfect, but we've all got a little bit of extra time on our hands these days, so hopefully we can have some fun. So what you'll need for today's craft is some cardboard. You might want to use an old cereal box or something like that, or you might have a bigger piece of cardboard, but if you use the bigger, thicker pieces, you might need a grown-up to help you cut it. We need some paper, so I'm just using some of my daughter's art paper. If you would like to make the poppies, you'll need some egg cartons, just a few. If you like, you can use paints, or alternatively you can use crayons or textures or some of your pencils that you've got laying around. You will need some glue and some sticky tape and obviously some scissors. But before we start with the craft, some of you might have some questions about what ANZAC Day is. Now, ANZAC's actually an acronym. So ANZAC stands for the Australian and New Zealand Armed Corps. So that's all the armed services in Australia and New Zealand. So we're pretty close mates, us countries. Now, why do we commemorate ANZAC Day on the 25th of April? Well, that's because on the 25th of April in 1915, during World War I, the Anzacs formed part of the Allied expedition to capture the Gallipoli Peninsula, which is in Turkey, which is why you see a lot of Australians and New Zealanders head to Turkey to commemorate ANZAC Day with the dawn memorial services there. You quite often will see it on the news. Now, ANZAC Day isn't a day of celebration as such. It's more of a commemoration, a day of remembering, a day of, for some people, thanking people that have served in the armed services, or the men and women that have served. Traditionally, there would be a parade, there'd be a service, a dawn service at the War Memorial, or at the War Memorial in your town or suburb by your local council. There'd be wreath laying and bugle playing and so forth. So a lot of those things will be different this year. A lot of them will be televised, much like we're doing here, because we're all doing our bit to flatten the curve. So men and women of the armed services. Now we're actually quite lucky because today I've got somebody who's actually served in the armed forces here with us today. My husband, Tim. So I'll just ask him to come down from his office upstairs and we'll have a little chat. Welcome back. I now have my wonderful husband with us, Tim. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tim.
You're welcome, Libby.
Now, Tim, can you tell us what part of the Defence Force you served in?
Sure. I was in the Royal Australian Engineers back in early 2000.
Is that in the Army or the Navy or?
That was in the Army.
Oh, splendid. So I noticed that you've actually got a few interesting items here to show us today. Would you care to show us your first item?
I do, thank you. This is commonly known as a slouch hat, and it is a parade hat that is worn by the Army. You'll see that it has a coloured patch on the side, which tells you what unit this hat comes from. It has insignia on the front to tell people what corps the person that owns the hat is in this case, the Royal Australian Engineers. And it has a badge on the side showing the Army.
That's very nice. And would you always wear it with the flap up?
You would only usually wear the flap up on ANZAC Day and very specific ceremonies.
Oh, that looks very interesting. And I notice that you have one other object here.
I do. I have what's known as the Australian Defence Force Medal, which, funnily enough, is actually 3 medals. It is a large medal, which is worn whenever wearing a medal is needed, a smaller medal for certain dinner obligations where you have to wear medals, but you're not going to wear your large ones. And you have what's known as a colour bar.
Day-to-day wear on your
For day-to-day wear, more or less. You'll see people that have been in the military for a very long time would have huge bars of colours on their chest.
Thank you very much for that, Tim. Now, given that this is an ANZAC Day Craft and we're talking about ANZAC Day, what does ANZAC Day mean to you?
ANZAC Day to me is a special time to reflect on service people, past and present, that have risked their lives and dedicate their time every day to preserve our way of life.
Well, thank you very much for that, Tim, and thank you for taking time out of your very busy day. We'll let you get back to work upstairs while we do some crafting. Thanks so much. Well, that was really interesting, wasn't it? So, our first step of making the wreath is making the circle bit that we're going to stick all our handprints onto. So, what we're going to do is get the plate and put it down on our piece of cardboard. And we're going to get one of my daughter's smelly textures she's not allowed to play with. And we're going to trace around the big plate. Whoop, that's okay. Doesn't need to be perfect. Okay, then we take off that big plate. And we put something smaller in the middle there. That looks about right. I'm going to trace around that. Don't worry if we get a bit of texture on it, we can just chuck it in the dishwasher. It'll be okay. I'm sure the text is non-toxic. So what you should have then is something that looks a bit like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut out the inside so that it makes a nice circle. So now we have to cut our circle. So cutting's a bit tricky, I know. And I'm using big grown-up scissors, which makes it a bit easier, but you'll have to use your smaller scissors. Now, if you're a bit on the younger side and you're still not that confident cutting, you can always ask your grown-up for some help. I'm sure that they'll love to help you out here. Because circles are hard to cut. Mine aren't perfect at all. I wouldn't even say I'm a terribly crafty person, but I do enjoy doing it. And I think, as long as we all recognise that no one's expecting perfection, we can all just have some fun. All right, so now we should have a big circle and a little bit in the middle there. I'm going to show you a nifty trick on how to cut out the inside. So essentially you fold it in half, sort of like, there we are. Now it looks like a bit like a crescent moon there. And you just cut along the line. And lo and behold, believe it or not, you're going to have the working of your wreath. There we go. Whoop. So that's our most important bit. That's the bit that we're going to stick everything to make the circle. But we're going to put that aside for now because we're going to make the second most important bit after this. So the next important bit is we need to get our paper. So to make our hands. Now you can do a couple at a time really. That way you cut down on paper. Just time really. And these are some that I made earlier. So we're going to make about, my big one had about 10 to 12. This one's a bit smaller, so I think we'll stick at about 10. So this piece of paper, what I do is put my hand there and I'm like, you know what? I can fit 2 hands on there. Save paper. So fold it in half. Time and energy saved. So you fold it in half. Just make sure it's all even Steven. All right, now I'm going to put that down and I'm going to trace around my hand. Okay, so I've got a pen here. But you might want to use a pencil or whatever you really have handy, to be honest. It tickles a little bit going around and around the hand. This is just a nice crafting activity, just generally decorating a hand. Okay, then you take it off and voila, there's your hand. So we're going to cut that now. And again, cutting can be a bit, can be a bit hard, particularly when there's lots of fiddly bits at the top. So if you feel you need some help from your grown-up, you just yell out for them and they'll give you a hand, I'm sure. So around one finger, going around the second finger. Tell you what, my dog is enjoying having us at home all the time. She's snoozing on the rug over there. Going around the third finger, going to the fourth one, and then it's my thumb. And I can show you how many hands we just made. And again, they don't need to be perfect, guys. You just do things at your own pace. Get those ready. Almost finished there. Alrighty. So now you can see that you've got some hands. And not only that, I've got multiple hands. 1, 2, 3, 4 hands out of 4 pieces of paper. So now we're going to paint these bad boys, and so then we can make the poppies while they dry. So now we're up to the painting portion of making our wreath. Now, it's important to put your art smock on if you're going to do some painting. I've got my gardening apron on. I did wash it beforehand, so it looks a bit more spiffy than it normally would. Use any old sort of paint. This is just a pot that I liberated from my daughter's crafting set out in the shed. Any brand will do. And remember, if you don't have green, you can always mix blue and yellow together. That makes a nice shade of green. That's what I did on the other one that I've made. Now, I use a little bit of cardboard so I don't get paint all over the table, just because I like my table and sometimes things take a little bit to wash off. So the painting, you don't need to, have a go. Get in there. You could even use your fingers if you like, as long as your parents say it's okay. And the brush strokes, they can make sort of like a texture, like of a plant. So it's quite nice in a sense to get different sort of textures happening. And you might want to do half with paint and half with crayon. I'll show you the ones that I've done with crayon earlier. So you want to do both sides because you want that sort of little bit of a curl so that the hands look a bit more like leaves, as I was saying. Because traditionally wreaths are made with flowers and leaves and stems and things. So, I want it to look like our creation, but sort of like what would normally happen if it was made out of plants. Almost done. Oh, getting there. Done. All right. So that's it. So you just sort of paint that. Oh, it's a bit pongy, isn't it? And just make sure it's all coloured in. Beautiful. And then, this is important, peel it off the cardboard because it'll stick as it dries if you don't. Learned that the hard way. Now remember to pop your paintbrush in your glass of water and put the lid on the paint so you don't spill it. Okay, and this is one that I did with crayon earlier. Just a rough outline, just coloured it all in quite quickly. And then I thought for some of them I might do some texture drawings on it too, just to make it a little bit more jazzy, a little bit more fun. So you can do that. So I'm going to finish painting all the rest of my hands and then I'm going to show you how to do the poppies while they dry. So we're going to do the poppies while all the other bits dry because that can take a little bit of time and you don't want to be gluing wet paint paper, everything will just go everywhere. So if you want, you can make poppies. So just an old bit of egg cartons, I generally keep some around for crafting. And you just cut one off and I'm going to show you how to make it into a flower. I might actually cut 2 off while I'm here. Again, this might be a bit tricky with your little scissors. You might need a grown-up to help with the others. Okay, so we get a pen. And you see these little points here? So you just make some marks like that, just wherever they are. And they're just more of a guiding point for cutting. And so what you're going to do is then you're going to make little flower petals and slice them a bit in there on those lines. If I had smaller scissors, it might be easier, but I don't have smaller scissors. These are a bit. I'd have to just tear them. As I said, not everything has to be perfect. It's more about tearing them or cutting them to make them look like petals. And slice that bit there. Slice that one there. And tidy that one up there. There we go. Now it looks a bit like a flower, doesn't it? And we're going to paint that. We're going to get our red paint. Oh, I've got to get the lid off without it going everywhere first. There we go. And you can be quite rough with this because it makes a really nice texture if you're a bit rough with your brush. Now again, I'll show you one which I did with crayon earlier as well, but I just think the red paint, if you've got it, it just stands out beautifully. And you don't need to use much of the paint, just with a dry brush. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect, but it does look quite remarkable when it's all finished. And you can hear my husband singing upstairs as he does his work. And we'll have to keep ourselves entertained these days. Can't always be watching Netflix. And there we go, and then we'll just get the blue paint. Just a little dab. And just pop that in the middle there. I don't have black paint, so I'm just using blue. And look at that, doesn't that look remarkable? But also, quite stunningly, the one that I did with, yeah, this crayon that I did earlier, that looks just as remarkable as well. There we go, there are the poppies. So we're just going to wait for them to dry and I'll show you how to construct it all. So we're just going to apply a good amount of glue onto the circle. I always say you can't have too much glue, but I mean, maybe you can. But I prefer to have too much than too little and things fall off. Besides, playing with glue's fun. Crafting is just generally a bit of fun for the afternoon. Always good on a Friday, particularly when you're at work. Just a little bit of crafting. Get your story time session sorted. Okay, so that's got lots of glue on it now. Now, the trickiest bit with this is to sort of get that circular motion. So I always work with the thumb. Always make sure that the thumb is on the same spot. So thumb out, see? So that's thumbs out. And if you've got lots of glue, you can sort of manipulate it a bit once it's sort of on there, if you know what I mean. It'll be a bit wet and squiggly. So Tam and I also decorated some of these whilst we were waiting for them to dry. Just keep going around the circle. I like to think about why I'm making the craft when I'm doing this. So, maybe you want to think about what Australia Day means to you. Maybe you can ask, your mum or your dad or your grown-up if they know of somebody that has served in the army and if they would like to talk to you about their time in the army or the Navy or the Air Force. Ask them what ANZAC Day means to them. All right, so now we're going to get some. So now we've made that lovely wreath. We've got enough handprints, and now we're going to get some glue. Now you might need super glue for the poppies. I'm not going to lie, sometimes they do fall off, but use a good amount of glue on there or some sticky tape and stick them on wherever you like them to go, really. I've made 3 this time. That there, and we'll get our last one. To get some more glue on that paintbrush there. And there we, whoop, don't know if that one's going to stick. That's okay. And there we go. And guys, look at what we've just made. It's not perfect, but it's pretty great. Oh, things are falling off, but that's okay. As I said, you might need some sticky tape for those. But look, we've made a wreath. Now when that's fully dry, you might want to sticky tape some flowers from your garden on there. You might want to write some messages to that, people that have served. And as I was thinking is, if you've got a war memorial near your house where you do your, your exercise on your bike or your scooter, you might want to lay the wreath there, or you might want to hang it on your door or on your fence, whatever you like, really. But thank you very much for joining me for this craft session, and happy crafting. Bye.